Most of my life, people have called me the stable one, the planner, the one who never loses her cool. I used to wear that title like a badge of honor until the man I loved turned it into an insult. Harry and I had been living together for almost a year and a half when I started noticing the quiet ways he was slipping away. It wasn't loud, not the dramatic kind of distance you can point to and say, that's when it happened. No, it crept in softly, like the sound of the fridge humming at midnight, something you only hear when the rest of the world is still. He used to look at me like I was home, but lately his eyes carried that vacant glow of someone looking at a screen while their soul was somewhere else. I'd catch him scrolling through travel reels, couples laughing on dirt bikes in Bali, kissing under fireworks in Paris, cliff diving somewhere wild. The kind of curated chaos that looks romantic only until you realize no one's showing what happens after the camera cuts. He'd sigh quietly, not enough to invite a conversation, just enough for me to hear it. And that sigh, God, it was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. I thought maybe he was stressed. Work, family life, it could be anything. So I started trying harder, making his favorite dinners after my own 12-hour IT shifts, planning small date nights, leaving little notes on the counter. But every gesture landed flat like a song he'd already grown tired of hearing. One night while we were watching a movie, Harry's phone buzzed. He smiled at the screen, smiled and locked it before I could see the name. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be that girlfriend. But something about the way his thumb hovered over the message icon burned itself into my memory. Then came the little things. He started working out later than usual, coming home smelling like someone else's perfume, not strong, but faint enough to make me doubt myself. He started dressing differently. He changed his hair. And one evening, while we were sitting on the balcony drinking wine, he mentioned her name for the first time. Haley. She was wild, he said with a laugh, eyes glazed with nostalgia. We used to take road trips with no plans. Just pack and go. She drove me insane, but, God, she had this fire. I didn't ask who brought her up. I just sat there sipping my wine, pretending my stomach hadn't just twisted into knots. He looked at me after a moment, maybe expecting jealousy, maybe hoping for it. But I didn't give him that satisfaction. Instead, I smiled and said softly, sometimes fire burns everything it touches. He laughed like I was joking. I wasn't. From that night on, Haley's ghost was everywhere in his stories, his playlists, even his dreams. One morning, he mumbled her name in his sleep. I froze, watching the man beside me whisper another woman's name like a prayer. That's when I realized I wasn't competing with a person. I was competing with his nostalgia, with the adrenaline rush of chaos disguised as love. Still, I held on. Because that's what I do. I hold things together even when they're already broken. Then came the Thursday that changed everything. Harry came home early, threw his keys on the counter, and walked straight to our bedroom. He didn't kiss me hello, didn't even ask how my day was. When I followed him in there, it was on the bed, a suitcase, half open, half packed. Going somewhere, I asked, my voice steady, even though my hands weren't. He didn't look guilty. He didn't even look surprised. Yeah, he said, folding a t-shirt. Just a trip. I need to clear my head. With who, I asked quietly. He hesitated for just a second too long. Haley, he finally said. The air left my lungs. Your ex. He rolled his eyes like I was being unreasonable. She invited me. It's just a week. We're adults, Judy. You always talk about trust, so trust me. I stood there staring at him, at the man I thought I knew. You're really going on vacation with your ex because you're bored. He sighed, dropping the shirt. You don't get it. Everything with you is so predictable. Same food, same schedule, same weekends. You're safe, Judy. Too safe. That word hit like a slap. Too safe. I wanted to scream, to throw something to remind him who was there when his car broke down, when his father was in the hospital, when his paycheck bounced and I covered rent. But instead I took a breath. Then go, I said softly. He blinked, caught off guard. Wait, that's it. I nodded. You're chasing chaos, Harry. I won't compete with your need to feel alive. Go find whatever it is you think you're missing. He opened his mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to apologize, but I didn't stay to hear it. I turned and walked out of the room before my voice could crack. That night I slept on the couch. In the morning, I heard the sound of his suitcase wheels rolling across the floor, then the front door closing. No goodbye, no I'll call you, just silence. I didn't cry. I didn't chase him through the airport. I didn't text or call or post anything online to prove I was fine. Instead, I changed the locks. When the locksmith left, I stood in the middle of the apartment, our apartment, and looked around. The space felt foreign. His coffee mug still sat on the counter. His toothbrush leaned against mine like they were still a pair. The fridge hummed with leftover echoes of him. That's when it hit me. Not anger, not grief, but an eerie calm. The kind of calm you don't trust at first because it feels like silence after a storm. Harry wanted chaos. He left it behind with me. And I was just starting to realize how peaceful that could be. The first night without Harry, I didn't sleep. Not because I missed him, at least not in the way you might think. It was the silence that kept me awake. The kind that hums against your ribs and makes you realize how much noise love used to make even when it was unhappy. I sat on the couch until sunrise staring at the half-empty bookshelf we used to fill together. His favorite novels were gone, but the ones I'd bought him, and he never opened, still sat there untouched. It felt poetic somehow. He took the chaos and left the calm behind. For 2 days I tried to convince myself he'd realize what he'd done, that he'd text call or maybe even show up at the door apologizing embarrassed. But deep down I knew better. Men like Harry don't return because they regret hurting you. They return when the person they ran to stops feeding their fantasy. By day 3, I stopped checking my phone. I canceled his access to the Wi-Fi, logged him out of my streaming accounts, and changed every password. The apartment was mine again. Quiet, steady, dull, and mercifully mine. On the 4th day, the first message came in. Harry, hey, so I guess you changed the locks. That's a little extreme, don't you think? I stared at the screen for a long moment, then deleted the message. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window. The city outside pulsed with life cars' laughter, neon signs flickering across buildings. Somewhere out there, Harry was probably sitting on a beach with Haley drinking cocktails and convincing himself he'd made the right choice. Let him. The next morning, 2 more texts appeared. Harry, Judy, be serious. I still have clothes there. We need to talk. Don't be immature about this. Immature. That word made me laugh, a sharp, bitter sound that startled even me. I'd been the adult the entire time, paying bills, cooking meals, holding the weight of his moods when he couldn't even hold eye contact. Now I was the immature one because I'd refused to be humiliated twice. I didn't reply. A day later, a voicemail came through. I listened only once. Okay, I don't know what your problem is, but you can't just ghost me. You're not some petty little girl. Be an adult and answer the phone, Judy. I replayed that line in my head. Be an adult. Funny how people call you childish when you stop letting them get away with things. I saved that voicemail not to share, not to prove anything, but as a small reminder of who he really was when he wasn't trying to charm me. The following week, I heard through mutual friends that his healing trip had ended early. Apparently, the dream vacation with Haley imploded around day 3. They'd been drinking at the resort bar when Haley accused him of being emotionally dull. He retaliated by calling her a drama addict, and by midnight, they'd had a shouting match in front of strangers. She left him in the hotel lobby with her suitcase and blocked his number. I didn't laugh. I didn't even feel vindicated. What I felt was something colder clarity. I had been his emotional home, the one he came to when he needed to be safe, fed, and believed in. Haley had been his fire, the chaos he romanticized when life felt too quiet. He thought he could keep both worlds without consequence. He was wrong. A few days later, he tried again. Harry, look, I know things got messy, but what we had was good. You can't just pretend I don't exist. Harry, minutes later, Haley's not who I thought she was. I made a mistake. But you made me feel safe, Judy. Doesn't that count for something? I almost replied. I'll admit it. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Yes, it counts for something, but not enough. But I stopped myself, because the truth was it had counted for everything and he had thrown it away. Instead, I packed the small box I'd kept on the kitchen counter, his phone charger, his old hoodie, a couple of framed photos he hadn't taken when he left, and mailed it to his mother's house. No note, no explanation. Just a clean ending, wrapped in brown tape. 3 days later, he sent one last message. Harry, you think you're punishing me, but you're just hurting yourself. You'll never find someone who understands you like I did. I chose you when I could have had anyone. You're throwing that away over one mistake. That was the moment my patience finally snapped. One mistake. One mistake is forgetting an anniversary. One mistake is saying something cruel in anger and apologizing for it. But what he did wasn't one mistake, it was a pattern. Months of emotional neglect, quiet disrespect, and finally betrayal disguised as self-discovery. I stared at the message until it blurred, then deleted the entire thread. That night, for the first time since he left, I slept deeply. No tossing, no pacing, no checking the phone, just silence. The next morning, I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about him once during the night, not even in my dreams. And that's when it clicked. Peace doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It just slips into your life quietly like morning light through the blinds. From then on, I started rebuilding my days. I went to the gym again, started working from the office twice a week instead of staying home. I filled the spaces he left behind with small, gentle things, new plants on the windowsill, candles that smelled like cedar, and honey playlists that didn't remind me of him. I even smiled more, not because I was healed yet, but because I was finally becoming someone new. Someone who didn't need to be understood by a man who couldn't even understand himself. What I didn't know then was that Harry wasn't done. When men like him lose control of your emotions, they come back to see if they still have the power to twist them. And soon he'd try again. Silence has a strange way of becoming addictive. At first, it felt suffocating, like standing in an empty church after everyone's gone home, hearing your own heartbeat echo off the walls. But then after a while, I started craving it. The apartment was quieter now. No more Spotify playlists blaring at 1 a.m. No more passive-aggressive sighs when I worked late. No more clinking of Harry's spoon against his coffee mug, the rhythm that once felt like routine, now replaced by nothing but calm air. The first few mornings were the hardest. I'd wake up half expecting to hear the shower running or smell his awful instant coffee. But instead, I heard birds. Just birds. Outside the window, beyond the noise of everything he'd taken with him. I began filling the silence with small, steady rituals, watering plants before work, cooking breakfast for one without feeling sorry for myself, opening the curtains and letting the light flood in instead of hiding behind them like I used to when he'd sleep till noon. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was peace. And peace, I realized, doesn't always come wrapped in joy. Sometimes it just means the absence of noise. Then the text started changing tone. Harry, Judy, this is ridiculous. We can talk like adults. Harry, hours later. I don't deserve this. You're overreacting. Harry, 2 days later. Fine, stay in your perfect little world. You'll regret it. Every message carried less confidence than the last, like his ego was slowly starving. I didn't answer any of them. Not because I was trying to punish him, because I finally realized I didn't owe him closure. A few days later, I received another voicemail. You think ignoring me makes you strong? It just proves you're cold. You always were. You build walls and call them boundaries. He was angry now, bitter, and that told me everything I needed to know. See, the version of me Harry loved wasn't real. He loved control disguised as calm. He mistook my patience for permission, and now that I wasn't playing along, he had no idea how to function. I saved that voicemail too. Not out of spite, but because I wanted to remember the sound of his unraveling. Then came the news I didn't expect, but couldn't pretend not to enjoy. A mutual friend, Jenna, texted me one night. You probably don't care, but Harry and Haley split up. It was bad. She kicked him out of her apartment last week. I just replied, thanks for letting me know. Apparently, the grand adventure ended in a drunken argument about loyalty. He accused her of being manipulative. She accused him of being spineless. They both cried, broke a lamp, and she threw his clothes off the balcony. Part of me wanted to laugh, but mostly I felt something better detached. I used to believe karma would come in fireworks. Turns out it arrives quietly in the form of a text message you read while sipping tea wrapped in your own peace. Still, I wasn't completely healed. There were nights when loneliness crept in, especially on Fridays. The kind of nights we used to order Thai food and watch terrible reality shows while pretending everything was fine. Now it was just me, a single plate, and the muted glow of my TV. Sometimes I'd catch myself scrolling through his old messages not to miss him, but to remind myself what I survived. His tone, his words, the way he could make me doubt my worth with one sigh. That was the real poison, not the cheating. The way he made me feel boring for being emotionally consistent. One Sunday morning, as I sat at my desk finishing a project, a knock came at the door. My stomach tightened. No one had said they were visiting. When I looked through the peephole, nothing. Just an envelope taped to the door. It wasn't handwritten, but I knew the printout inside was from him. Typed. Polite. Pretending to be rational. I know you're still angry, but you don't have to erase me. We shared a home memories love. You're not cold, Judy. You're just scared. I still believe in what we had. I stared at it for a long minute before tearing it into strips and tossing it into the trash. Not even rage this time, just exhaustion. Because that's the thing about people like Harry, they don't come back for you. They come back for their version of you, the one who tolerated everything, without calling it out. Later that week, I went out with some coworkers for dinner. The restaurant was loud, full of laughter and wine glasses clinking. I hadn't been out like that in months. Someone made a joke, and I laughed so hard my chest actually hurt. It hit me then. This was what healing sounded like. Not soft piano music and scented candles, but loud laughter in a crowded room, life coming back uninvited and messy. That night, as I walked home, the city lights reflected on the wet pavement, and I thought about something my therapist once said years ago. When you stop chasing the person who hurt you, you finally give your future a chance to catch up. For the first time, I understood it. Because somewhere in that future, though, I didn't know it yet, someone new was already waiting. Someone who would see my calm not as a flaw, but as home. But before that peace could arrive, there was one more ghost I had to face. Harry wasn't done haunting me yet, not by a long shot. It had been almost a month since Harry left, and for the first time, the word alone didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like a place quiet, clean, and mine. I'd stopped checking my phone every few minutes. The silence no longer scared me, it soothed me. I woke up early, cooked breakfast for myself, even bought a small bouquet of white lilies every Sunday just to see something beautiful on the kitchen table. But of course, peace has a way of drawing chaos back in. It started with another text this time, one that didn't sound angry. Harry, I know I messed up. I just want to talk. Please, Judy, just once. I ignored it. Then a day later. Harry, you were the best thing that ever happened to me. I was stupid. You made me feel safe. Haley never cared like you did. The word safe made me flinch. Funny how it used to sound like love, but now tasted like pity. That night, I sat at my desk watching the city lights flicker against my window. My computer pinged with a work email, and I almost laughed at the contrast, someone asking about a project deadline, while my ex tried to resurrect a relationship he buried himself. I didn't reply to him. Instead, I packed a small box of his leftover things, a leather bracelet he never wore, 2 old t-shirts, a broken watch he'd promised to fix. I sealed it and mailed it to his mother's house. No note, no closure speech, just weight removed from my life. 3 days later, another message lit up my phone. Harry, I don't get it. You think ignoring me makes you strong? You're just being heartless. I deleted it. But that night, lying in bed, I realized something. His words didn't sting anymore. They didn't crawl under my skin the way they used to. They just passed through me. I wasn't numb, I was free. And maybe the universe decided to reward me for that peace, because a week later I met Arthur. It happened at a mutual friend's game night. I almost didn't go crowds, and small talk weren't my thing, but Jenna begged me to at least act like a functioning adult again, so I went. Arthur was sitting on the couch quietly observing the chaos. Not loud, not trying to impress anyone, just there, present, grounded. When I sat beside him, he smiled politely and said, "You look like someone who's pretending to have fun." I laughed, caught off guard. That obvious. Only to people who do the same thing he said, sipping his drink. We ended up talking for hours about work, about family, about how exhausting it is to always be the responsible one. There was no sparkly movie magic moment, no grand flirtation, just comfort, familiarity, like I'd met someone who spoke the same emotional language. At the end of the night, he asked for my number. I hesitated, then gave it. Not because I was ready, but because for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel guarded. Meanwhile, Harry's messages were getting desperate. Harry, you'll never find someone like me. You're making a mistake. I made one, but you can fix this. There it was again, I made one. That phrase, the subtle rewriting of history to make betrayal sound like an accident. So I wrote something I hadn't planned to. I didn't send it to him, I just wrote it in my notes app. No, Harry, you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. And I finally made mine. I deleted it afterward, but it was enough. The words didn't need to reach him, they needed to reach me. Over the next few weeks, Arthur and I started seeing each other more. Dinners, walks, coffee after work. He never rushed things, never filled the air with false promises. When I told him about Harry just a little, not everything, he didn't pity me. He just nodded and said, "Sounds like he mistook stability for boredom. Happens more than people admit." It was such a simple sentence, but it felt like a balm. With Arthur, everything was still. No chaos, no guessing games, just presence. And I realized something painful. Harry had made me believe that peace meant stagnation. But peace in its purest form is growth without fear. A few days later, I received one final message from Harry. Harry, you think you're over me, but you'll never find anyone who understands you like I did. You're punishing yourself, Judy. I smiled when I read it because for once he was wrong. I wasn't punishing myself, I was protecting myself. That same evening, I met Arthur for dinner at a small rooftop place. The air smelled like rain and jasmine, and for a second I thought of Harry, his absence, his silence. But then Arthur said something that pulled me right back to the present. You look peaceful, like you finally exhaled. I looked at him and realized he was right. I had exhaled finally after months of holding my breath. And somewhere deep inside me, a quiet certainty took root. Harry's regret wasn't my responsibility, it was his mirror. He was finally seeing what he'd lost, and I was finally seeing what I'd never needed. It had been 2 months since Harry's last message, and by then, he had become little more than a background noise in my life, a name that no longer made my pulse quicken. Arthur and I were moving slowly, deliberately. No fireworks, no chaos, just a quiet kind of connection that made me feel like breathing was finally easy again. So when Jenna invited me to her engagement party, I almost said no. I wasn't in the mood for small talk and smiling faces pretending everything was perfect. But Arthur convinced me otherwise. Go, he said with that calm grin of his. Besides, I want to meet your friends. Let me be your emotional support guy. I laughed. You have no idea what you're signing up for. But he did, and he went anyway. The party was held at a rooftop bar downtown with fairy lights strung between metal beams and soft music spilling from hidden speakers. People mingled with champagne glasses in hand, laughter echoing through the night air. And then I saw him, Harry, standing near the bar alone. No Haley, no friends. Just him wearing that same half smirk he used to practice in the mirror when he thought I wasn't looking. For a second, the world tilted. Not from love, not from nostalgia, but from recognition. Seeing the ghost of who you used to be standing right in front of you can feel like being haunted. He saw me too. His expression froze, then flickered with something that wasn't quite guilt and wasn't quite pride. I felt Arthur's hand brush mine. You okay? I nodded, inhaling slowly. Yeah, just old ghosts. We walked past him toward the drinks table. I didn't look back. But ghosts never stay quiet for long. Half an hour later, as I was refilling Arthur's glass, Harry appeared beside me. Judy, he said softly, as if saying my name could still summon the version of me who would drop everything for him. I looked at him steady. Harry. He gave a faint smile. Didn't expect to see you here. It's a public party, I said, reaching for the soda water. Not your living room. He chuckled, pretending to take the joke lightly, but I could see the tension in his jaw. So, that's him. He tilted his head toward Arthur, who was chatting with friends nearby. Yes, I said simply. He's different from what I imagined. Good, I replied. He's not like you. That shut him up for a moment. I could feel his pride deflate just slightly. But then he smiled again, the same smug, familiar smile. You upgraded fast. I turned to him, met his gaze head on. I didn't upgrade Harry. I healed. The words came out effortlessly, calm but sharp enough to leave a mark. He blinked, thrown off balance. You really don't miss us at all. I studied him carefully. The man I once loved, the man who made me believe stability was a flaw. His face looked the same, but something about his eyes had changed. They were tired, searching for validation he'd never find. I miss who I thought you were, I said quietly. And I miss the version of myself who believed you could love without destroying what you touched. But no, I don't miss us. Because there was never really an us, Harry. There was me and you trying to find excitement at my expense. He swallowed hard, the tension in his throat visible. I made a mistake, he whispered. Everyone does. But you threw me away like I meant nothing. I tilted my head. No, Harry, you threw me away. I just didn't chase after you. For a second, I thought he might cry. But it wasn't sadness in his eyes. It was frustration. Anger, that deep ache of losing control over something he thought he owned. I hope he's everything you think he is, Harry said bitterly, glancing toward Arthur. I smiled. He is. Peaceful, loyal, emotionally grown. Everything you mocked me for wanting. I placed my glass down gently on the table and turned to leave. But just before walking away, I looked back once more, not out of longing, but to seal the moment shut. Goodbye, Harry, I said softly. For real this time. And then I walked away. When I reached Arthur, he didn't ask questions. He just smiled and handed me a plate of dessert. You look lighter, he said. Yeah, I replied. I just buried a ghost. He grinned. Then here's to resurrection. We clinked glasses, and for the rest of the night, I didn't look back once. Later, as the crowd thinned and the city shimmered below us, Arthur and I danced. Not the dramatic spotlight kind of dance, just slow swaying, two people breathing in sync. It felt safe. And for the first time, I didn't flinch at that word. Because maybe safety wasn't the absence of passion. Maybe it was the presence of peace. And as we left the rooftop that night, I realized something profound. Harry had mistaken my calm for emptiness. But calm isn't empty, it's earned. A week after the engagement party, life settled back into rhythm, slow, steady, undramatic. And that was the most beautiful thing about it. The mornings began with coffee and sunlight instead of tension. My laptop hummed softly as I worked from home, a candle burning nearby. I'd play quiet music, nothing emotional, just the kind that fills the silence without demanding attention. Peace had become my favorite sound. Then one morning, as I was checking emails from clients, a new message appeared. Subject line: Can we talk? Sender Harry Cole. I stared at it for a long minute before opening it. Judy, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to say this. I've been doing a lot of thinking. I messed up badly. I got lost chasing something that wasn't real. I thought I wanted freedom, but I just wanted attention. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. You were the only one who ever really cared about me. I still love you, even if I didn't show it right. Please, can we talk? Even just once, I miss you. Harry. There was no venom this time, no arrogance, just words stripped of their armor. But even so, they didn't move me. Because behind the apology, I could still feel it, the undertone of self-pity, the desperate need to be absolved. He didn't want forgiveness. He wanted freedom from guilt. I hovered over the reply box for a few seconds. My fingers didn't even twitch. Then I archived the email, clicked mark as read, and went back to work. No rage, no tears, just silence, the kind that doesn't ache anymore. That night I went to Arthur's place. He'd made dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta, wine, and laughter. The kind of night that feels normal in the best possible way. At one point, he looked at me across the table and said, "You've got that look." "What look?" I asked, smiling. "The one people get when they've finally stopped waiting for an apology." I paused, wine glass halfway to my lips. "You can tell?" He nodded. "Yeah, it's in your shoulders. You're not holding anything up anymore." And he was right. I used to carry every version of Harry's disappointment, the quiet sighs, the backhanded compliments, the guilt trips disguised as love. I used to shrink myself to keep his ego comfortable. But not anymore. After dinner, we sat on the couch and Arthur put on a record. The music was slow, older than both of us, but it filled the space like a heartbeat. I leaned against him and whispered, "You know what's funny? He used to tell me I was too calm, that I didn't feel things deeply enough." Arthur smiled. People who mistake peace for emptiness are usually addicted to noise. I let out a quiet laugh. Yeah. He wanted chaos. I just wanted clarity. "Did you get it?" he asked softly. I looked at him, the steady kindness in his eyes, the way he didn't need to be loud to be noticed. "I did," I said. He gave it to me when he walked out that door. Days turned into weeks, and though Harry never sent another message every now and then, I'd think about that email. Not because I missed him, but because it reminded me how far I'd come. It's strange how closure works. We think it comes from other people, the apology, the explanation, the promise that it won't happen again. But sometimes closure is realizing you no longer need any of it. Sometimes it's just waking up one morning, making coffee, and not thinking about them at all. Months later, I ran into Haley at a bookstore of all places. She looked different, tired, worn down in the way people do after mistaking chaos for passion too many times. She recognized me instantly. Her smile was small, uneasy. "You're Judy Wright." I nodded. "Yeah." She hesitated. I heard about what happened with Harry." "Yeah," I said simply. "We both survived." Her eyes softened, maybe in guilt, maybe in understanding. "He hasn't changed, you know." "I know," I said quietly. "That's why I did." We stood there for a moment, two women who had loved the same man for very different reasons, and learned from him in the same way. Then I smiled, wished her well, and walked out into the sunlight. That night, as I wrote in my journal, I found myself summarizing the entire chapter of Harry in one line. He wanted chaos, but I became the calm he'll never find again. And for the first time, that sentence didn't sound